I knew that Atlantis really existed, just because of how it was spoken of offhandedly.
Just that it was
in
known
early writings.
Yeah.
Well, not just mentioned, but mentioned offhandedly, like you would a place that's just a landmark.
Right. We landed in New York before we went to Montreal. Yeah.
We were in Austin.
Yeah.
By Dallas.
Right. Exactly. He's on this. This dude is an expert in this shit. And he's an expert in ancient catastrophes and the remnants and the evidence that shows that these civilizations existed and something happened. And he's focused on this one area in Africa that he believes is Atlantis. And he says it has all the hallmark characteristics, and there's all the evidence of massive water erosion surrounding the area. And that at one point in time, it's very likely that this area got hit with a massive flood, and it matches all the characteristics of Atlantis. When you see it, when you see the way the concentric circles of rings, try explaining this. You're going to see it. And try explaining this through a natural phenomenon that doesn't exist anywhere around it.
Right.
Concentric circles that is near what used to be water, and there's heavy water erosion marks all around it that indicate massive amounts of quick-flowing water in a very short period of time. So the Atlantis one.
Yeah, the Rishat structure. I was wondering if you saw those videos, Joe.
Yeah, no, that was a big one that I saw, because I've been fascinated by the concept of Atlantis. You know, ever since I had these conversations with Randall Carlson and Graham Hancock about the Younger Dryas impact theory, and this concept that somewhere in the roughly around 11,000, 12,000 years ago, we were hit by a series of comets. And it's pretty evident that that's a fact. If you do the core samples of the Earth, they find this nuclear glass all over the Earth that exists in that time period. And it seems like something happened that reset civilization. And there's very little evidence of advanced civilizations before that up until recently, up until the last couple of decades. They started uncovering things like Göbekli Tepe and all these other structures that are clearly from more than 12,000 years ago. And they're really complex and really large with enormous stones. And it's sort of caused people to rethink the history of the Earth and the history of human civilizations. And Atlantis has always been the big one. That has been the one that everybody talked about, was this incredibly advanced civilization, and no one can figure out where it is.
Right.
Or if it was real.
I think that Atlantis, because surely that wouldn't have been necessarily the name just through like the change of language, over, let's say, 12, 13,000 years ago, which would be the time frame. So like surely there would be several different changes of language, but I think it represented a civilization that was doing great things. They were more global than what many people think would be possible. Atlantis was said to be a kingdom made up of, or an empire, made up of 10 kingdoms. And then there was the lost city of Atlantis, which was the capital, which was said to be made up of concentric circles, 2 of water, 3 of land, and essentially that they were obliterated by a cataclysm, as passed down by Plato, although it's worth mentioning that Plato got the story of Atlantis from Solon, who was his uncle separated by 6 generations. But what most people don't realize is that Solon had traveled to Egypt, and so it's the ancient Egyptians is where that tale comes from, which makes it even more bizarre, because I would argue that the most spectacular ancient civilization is the Egyptians. I mean, no disrespect to the Romans.
Hard to deny.
Right? I mean, let me just say, because I want to, on this podcast, encourage people to travel to Egypt. Joe, you got to go.
When you look at Plato's version of Atlantis, is there an area of the world that seems likely? Yeah?
Yeah. You better watch my 6-hour presentation,
Okay,
Joe.
I will.
Yeah, no, but I look, it's detailed. That's why even in 6 hours, I can't really spell it. In my podcast I did, the first 9 episodes, 2 hours each, were devoted to, I thought, well, let's kick it off with Atlantis.
18 hours of Atlantis.
18 hours of it. The last episode 9 was devoted to the recat structure.
Wow.
So I had eight hours, so 16 hours, but we had some chatter and things like that in there, so maybe more like 12 or 14 hours. Let's look at the geology. Let's look at the geography, the oceanography, the astronomy, and see if it lines up, if it matches up. And so I think there's one place that pretty much is not all the details, but when you look at all of the areas around the planet that have been proposed for Atlantis, I think there's one place that fits the majority of his details, and that's the sunken Azores Plateau. And I say sunken because we know it's sunken, and it's right along the mid-Atlantic ridge.
The real speculation is they think that the people who built the pyramids built them way earlier than the conventional dating is. They think there's real evidence that shows they're 9,000, 11,000 years old. Easy.
No people built the pyramids.
No people?
No.
Who built them?
No people built the pyramids. And if you look around the world, you see certain telltale things that let you know that advanced machinery was in usage. Look, this whole thing where slaves are stronger people is a fallacy. We like to believe that slaves are stronger. Slaves are weaker because they don't eat the right food and they live a terrible life. Your slave population is not smarter and better conditioned unless you're enslaving the Jews.
They stopped thinking that quite a while ago. They think it was actually skilled labor because of the way they were eating. They found what their camps were, where their food was. They ate like very good food. So they think they were actually skilled labor, but also probably forced skilled labor. But that's probably not the people who built it. That's probably the people that were working on it. That's probably the people that worked in the village or in the city.
How many companies have done renovations on the White House? None of them have done enough renovation that they can claim it's their White House. So, yes, thousands of years worth of people were there. But that doesn't have anything to do with the building of it.
Who do you think built it?
Well, understand, we know enough now to understand that this was a complex. This was not...
right.
We've been led to believe that this is how much they worshipped their dead bodies.
Right.
But the evidence doesn't show any of that.
No, it doesn't.
Like when you see inside, when they have those intricate carvings and paintings and stuff in gold and stuff, you have to remember this is in a windowless room, folks. There's no candle soot. There's no... It's clearly a power plant and built specifically for that location on this planet.
When you saw my video, was that the very first time you had ever seen this thing before?
Yeah.
That's the thing. So many. When I first saw this, I was like, what the fuck is that? By the way, you see that white? All those white blemishes?
Uh-huh.
That's salt. This was under the ocean. And people, let me just say, you mentioned Randall Carlson and Graham Hancock. I love them. And I know for sure that they don't particularly think this is the site for a few different reasons. So let me say there's absolute doubt. Even I am not 100% certain. I'm not even 100% certain Atlantis existed. What I am certain is that humans were doing spectacular things and a cataclysmic event happened called the Younger Dryas and reset something for somebody.
Is there a natural explanation for this formation?
Yes. So let me say that it is considered to be mysterious. They're not 100% certain of it. However, the consensus is that it was a volcanic dome that had risen and collapsed multiple times, like 100 million years ago, allegedly. I say allegedly, I'm not necessarily disagreeing with that. I'm just saying I would like to know where sometimes they get these figures from. Like, explain to me why it was 100 million years ago and not 99 or 98, because here we are talking about how crazy things changed in just the last 12, 13,000 years. So when they throw around these numbers, 1 million years in itself is an incredibly long period of time. But getting back to your question, some had originally thought that maybe it was an impact site from an asteroid, or perhaps, but there's no evidence for it. Like there's none of the nano.
The problem is there's these concentric circles. I've never seen anything. I mean, obviously, I'm not an archaeologist, but I've never seen anything like this. If you study structures that are like man-made structures, I've never seen anything like this that humans have made.
There is evidence that there was a massive subsidence along the mid-Atlantic ridge. We actually talked about this a little bit, and I think in our very first discussion we had. which was what, 7, 8 years ago?
At least.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we talked about this a little bit. Geophysics shows that there's horizontal movement, lateral movement of the Earth's crust because of continental drift, but there's also vertical movement. And that is the result of isostatic compensation. That's called isostasy, is the vertical movement of the Earth's crust. Okay, so now this is the shore of Hudson Bay. Now this is where the ice sheet was the thickest, right? Now what are you seeing there? Hudson Bay is up here. These are shorelines because when the ice was removed, the land started rising back. So here's sea level, land is rising back.
And the land is rising because of a lack of weight of the ice?
Yes.
Oh.
Right. So you're sitting on a soft, cushiony chair right now, right? Are you?
Yep.
Okay. So your ass is causing isostatic depression of that cushion on your chair.
Right.
And if you sit up,
yeah,
you'll have isostatic compensation. Right?
So that's what that is along many, many, many lines.
Yes, those are all shorelines. Here's another view of it.
Wow.
Here's another view.
Wow.
That's the land rebounding a couple of thousand feet after the ice was removed. Now, the ice was removed, and all of those trillions of tons of weight, where did it go? In the Atlantic Ocean. Now, you look, the thinnest crust on the Earth is the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. And if you look at it, you'll see that there are transform faults that are what you would say orthogonal or at right angles to the ridge itself. Here you can see very clearly the triple plate junction and how the Azores Plateau. Okay, well, since the 1940s, the first expedition in 1948, there was when they started doing dredge samples from the floor of the Atlantic Ocean, which coincidentally, the name of the ship was the Atlantis.
Okay, so what you're looking at is approximately 250 miles inland in the total barren desert of Mauritania, Africa. So
but
the Western
this image
Sahara.
looks like, why is it blue?
That's just showing you
What it used to look like?
No, this is what it looks like right now through, I forgot what you call this type of animation, but it's a satellite imagery that they enhanced in order for you to see the difference in elevation and the actual structure to itself.
Okay, so like if there was water in this area, you would see it this way, that it would be these concentric circles that are raised above the water, and then the water would be inside of it like that.
Well, just to clarify, this particular image, no, this is not trying to represent water. So that blue is actually picking up on salt. So
salt, all that was salt. But I mean, it used to be underwater, right? It's salt because it was underwater.
That's what I believe, and that's what makes the most sense to me. Others will disagree, and let me tell you why. It is currently 1,300 feet above sea level. It's 250 miles inland. And so some people say this was never under the ocean, at least not for the last tens of millions of years, is what the scientists claim. I argue that since the salt is still there, and not only that, Jamie, if you go to the other images that show you more of the white, the one that you were previously on, the one to the middle to the left, right there. So those areas with the most white blemishes happen to be the areas that are the lowest in elevation, which to me tells me that salt water had settled there. But not only that, Joe, Atlantis was said to be, like we said, multiple rings of, water and land. However, it was said to open to the sea to the south. And what you're looking at here, the south, so this is oriented north, south, east, and west. What do you see to the south? And especially if we could get another...
This is a very flat area that looks like it's the lowest elevation. Like around it looks like it's higher. I mean, it's hard to tell from this image.
Jamie, will you Google map it? Just type in... even if you went to Mauritania, so you could see this from space. Astronauts use it as a locator, and they weren't really familiar or aware of it until the Gemini missions in the early 1960s. So if you go to... if you just go to Google Earth, you'll be able to find this quite quickly. It stands out. And it's why they call it the Eye of Africa or the Eye of the Sahara. All right, so just pan out a little bit, and it'll provide us with a much... Yeah, keep going. All that white is salt. In fact, I had a friend, Josh Sigurdsson, that went out there and tasted that shit off the fucking ground. That's salt. Because a lot of people say, this was never under the ocean. And I'm like, all right, you see all that? Even Randall Carlson himself, which let me just say, he, for a few reasons, doesn't... He favors the Azores. He doesn't think this is likely to be the location for a few reasons.
He favors what?
The Azores, the island chain, which would be it's
And he thinks that was Atlantis?
he to him he's partial towards that. But so he analyzed this site, and you see all those striations, how it looks like the ocean, so that's all water erosion, Joe. And if you scroll in, so remember when Randall was on your show and he showed you the Missoula floodplains and all those giant ripples from the huge current that it went through? This is here. So scroll in, right there where your cursor is, Jamie. Scroll right in. You're going to see those same water ripples. Keep going, because this what you're looking at here is panned out. This is many miles. Like, keep in mind, this structure is 30 miles across.
That's crazy. That looks like the bottom of the ocean, like if you see where the water breaks on the sand.
Yep. And I have there's
that's
better
crazy.
pictures. And that, just to clarify, that white is salt. And that is because that's a lot of people don't know, Joe, that the Sahara Desert wasn't a thing until approximately 5,000 years ago. It's only in the last several years, and by the way, I'm quoting MIT research here, that the Sahara goes back and forth from green to desert approximately every 20,000 years.
Human beings it's possible if you had enough power and you had enough engineering and mathematics that you could figure out how to design and construct the pyramid.
Yes.
But then the logistical problem of getting the stones from hundreds of miles away, massive, several ton, up to 80-ton stones.
Joe,
That's crazy.
if you
500 miles away, some of them.
even if you could do it, let me ask you this: would you build it on sand?
I don't think it was originally sand. See, that's the thing.
Right. This was a fertile valley.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Right.
The
That's-
Nile Valley.
That
was the reason
they
why
had
they chose
electric
it.
and Wi-Fi, and they had all of that.
They probably did. And that's probably where the Younger Dryas impact theory comes in.
The greatest trick is to make us believe that people back then were dumber and we're
Right.
smarter.
Right.
And that whole thing is a fallacy.
Yeah, that's
And
definitely not real.
But it's worth it for us to believe that.
I think we are the children of the survivors of some great catastrophe. And I think that's why every single
Not
ancient
everybody.
biblical scholar. What?
Not everybody. Some people
What do you mean?
are that.
Some people are the survivors?
Right.
Well, I mean, most human beings probably got wiped out in comet storms. And I think we probably there's been points in history that they know of where human beings got down to like 7,000 people.
Who's counting them?
I think they use genetics and they backtrace and they try to find individuals that were capable of having X amount of children. I wonder how they do the calculations. It's a good question.
The things in
I'm
Hollywood
just guessing, honestly.
and in writing that have attracted our attention worldwide were all based on some truth. So all the stories of hobbits have been successful in all of their genres. Why? Because they existed. Like we now know that there were whole pygmy groups, and that, we understand that that's what the Seven Dwarves was.
Yeah. Like that island of Flores, man, that they found. They literally call it a hobbit. It was like a 3-foot tall person that was covered in hair, smaller head than us, used tools.
So this whole area, because people are like, well, that's not Atlantis. I'm like, well, first of all, if the Sahara Desert was a lush green tropical paradise, which had the largest known freshwater lakes ever known to have existed, for example, Mega Lake Chad, which it's like 3 times more water surface than all of the North American Great Lakes combined. It's a big sucker.
Holy shit. How's it not an ocean?
I know.
It's all fresh water?
It was when it existed, and that was at the time when the Sahara was green. And it also had some of the largest known rivers that were known to have existed throughout the world. I think they'd still be ranked 10th today or something like that. But so you have to, when you see this, people have to imagine that this area was once green, and that because one of the arguments I make is that the fact that salt is on top of that dirt, to me, is indicative that the ocean flowed over here far more recently than what people think.
How wide is this structure?
Okay, so
These concentric circles.
I brought a laser. Do you have a laser pointer in here?
No.
That's okay. So the circles themselves is about 14 and a half miles across. However, if you go the complete shebang, the whole circle itself is just shy of 30 miles.
So the whole thing is 30 miles, which would be like the size of a city.
Right. Well, keep in mind the outer ring would have been water, so that wouldn't have necessarily counted. But some people will say that this is too big according to Plato's description. And let me just say that I'm like, well, hold on a second. I don't think that we should consider that, because of loss of translation, that we should consider the measurements a key detail. The question becomes, is it big enough to be a city with possibly millions of people? Because the way it was described is that it was a city that was said to be busy all day, all night, rich in trade, with languages spoken from all over. So I'm like, okay, that would imply millions of people. I mean, if a city's busy all day and all night, I think of large metropolitan areas like New York, Chicago, London, whatever. And so if this was indeed an ancient or a site of an ancient civilization, well, then it would have, I mean, they're obviously not going to have skyscrapers, so it would have to be an area big enough to sustain that many people, and the Richat structure certainly does.